Hi, this is Anthony Padone for CompleteSql. Today, I'd like to talk about DMVs and one in particular called query stats. It returns aggregate performance statistics for cache plans within your SQL Server instance. And through the use of CompleteSql, we can investigate the metrics being collected. Looking at CompleteSql, we'll look at the instances that are running. I have two running right now. This one is running, it's executing code in the background, a query that's being collected and being stored in the cache plans, and query stats will report upon that. Also, this instance that I created is called analytics query stats, and it will actually execute a query that we wrote concerning an execution of query stats. So we'll look at that right now. We'll bring that up and we'll execute that, and it just executed. So the query stats ran, it looked at the cache plans and pulled up all the entries that are being stored within a local instance. What we can do is look at the query. We'll look at the synopsis right now of the query that we have here. And again, we're looking at query stats as listed here, and it's sys dm execute query stats. I said it's an aggregate performance statistics for cache plans. Now, when we look at the elements of the DMV or particular query stats, I think it's important to look at core attributes. It's important to look at dependent attributes and also descriptor attributes. So if we look at core attributes, those are actually the attributes of the DMV that express the main theme of the DMV. For instance, in query stats, we're looking at the reads, the writes, the elapsed times. So those are the core emphasis of a query that's executing, and those are metrics we want to look at. Dependent attributes are ones that link to other sources. So if we have an SQL handle or a plan handle, we can use that to extract other information about the SQL code, about the plan handle that's stored someplace else in another entity. And descriptors, DS descriptors, describe the actual element that was collected. It'll describe about the query that's collected. For instance, the execution count, which is an external count of how many times it ran, or one-time creation time of that particular query. So we'll go back to the query, run it again, and as you see, we have the 11 instances that have been captured by query stats. It's in offline, and we'll look at, actually the very first instance is the one we want to look at. So we'll identify it by SQL handle. And then during the processing, there's only certain columns that I want to investigate. The last execution time, the execution count, the handle. Let's see here, the last logical reads, the last elapsed time, and the actual code itself. So we'll include those in our columns and execute it. So if I put this back online, I'll capture one refresh instance of it. So this particular query it ran at 13, 20, 39, over 1100 execution counts, that's the handle, and the last logical reads was two logical reads from memory, and the elapsed time was 140, which are microseconds. Okay, so this is just a refresh, but it might be more helpful to have more of an accumulated display of this. So we'll go back to display, accumulate on, hit auto refresh, and let it run. Now it'll list again the execution times, the execution counts, again the handle, logical reads, and elapsed time. So we do see that it is going up, different times, and so forth. So now we're tracking one particular query of interest to us. We're concerned about the logical reads, which is always seems to be 2, and the elapsed time, which changes. So we did learn something, that even though the logical reads are always the same, the elapsed time is changing on that execution, some high, some low, and so forth. Another thing that we would like to do is save this information. So we can hit file punch. It's saved as a binary file. We can also let this accumulate before us in our display. Hit display, auto punch on. So a timer is set that will then hit file punch and save the information when we're extending ourselves to view this in a long-term situation. So it's being collected right now before us. If I go back to the main screen, I can create another instance called reader, and the reader I'll just say QS for query stats. I'll list it and bring it up. Now the query stats will actually read any binary file that's sitting out there. In particular, I want to read the query stats I'm collecting right now for future reference. So I go into the requests, query, file import. I know where things are stored. And we'll bring that up. We'll go to the file punch. We're working with the local express master database. There's query stats. And we'll get the latest run. And that'll bring it up. And that's what we're storing. And as you can see, it has all the information that we're storing. And actually, here's a query that's running right now. It's selecting everything from Adventure Works, and it's a parameterized query. So if we recap what we did, we're mostly interested in the query stats, collecting information, a particular query that we found we wanted to monitor and track, and that's what we're doing. We stored it in a binary file. We can go back and reference that and refresh that and use it for future use. So, as always, stay tuned, and thank you for watching.